Hello and welcome to the In Publishing podcast. My name is James Evelegh and I'm the editor of In Publishing. My guest this time is Uwern Jong, founder and editor-in-chief of OutThere magazine, a luxury travel and lifestyle magazine aimed primarily, but not exclusively, at the LGBTQ+ community. I talked to Uwern about how the magazine has evolved since it launched in 2010, how it's coped with the pandemic, and about the hot topic issues of diversity and inclusion, amongst many other things. Uwern tells us why print is such a magical medium.
I'm a lover of print, and I feel that particularly at the luxury end of the market, there's nothing as tactile and as experiential. In fact, that's a key word. You know, we talk about being experiential earlier, and there's just nothing as experiential and as tactile as a print magazine.
How the pandemic, which grounded the travel industry, had nonetheless given him the opportunity to rethink the business.
The pandemic gave us the opportunity to take stock about what was really important to our business and focus on the future. And I believe actually we've come out with a strategy for the future that is robust. And we have, we delivered things within the pandemic, sort of toyed with ideas. Toyed perhaps is the wrong word, but sort of developed and sort of fine-tuned ideas of what the future could be for OutThere. And I think we're in a really good place.
And about their winning entry in the Ppa Diversity Initiative of the Year award.
Well, actually, our submission was all about how diversity shouldn't be an initiative at all, and diversity should be ingrained into the very fabric of your everyday. And we demonstrated how that was the way we worked out there, and that's what led us to win.
Before we hear more from Uwern, a quick word about our valued sponsors. We would like to thank our podcast sponsor, Air Business, a market leader in distribution and subscription management services for the publishing industry. Its end-to-end service includes subscriber acquisition and marketing strategy, worldwide distribution, digital mail and e-commerce fulfillment, and warehouse and freight logistics. For more information, visit airbusiness.com. Uwern Jong, welcome to the In Publishing podcast.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Now, I notice, Uwern, on your LinkedIn profile, you describe yourself as experientialist-in-chief. What exactly is an experientialist-in-chief?
I'll tell you, you're not the first to ask, James. It's just a snazzy way of saying editor-in-chief, really. We describe all our writers here. In fact, anyone that's part of the team at OutThere as an experientialist, as we're heavily involved in experiential travel. The people that get involved in experiential travel are called experientialists, and that's our hashtag. That's become our hashtag, particularly over the last couple of years. And actually, we're in the process of trademarking it.
So, trademarking what? The word experience?
The word experientialist, yes.
Oh well, Can you do that?
You certainly can. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. If it's a property that you find that you've owned, we found that we've owned it, but we've started to see other magazines and travel bloggers and people on social media using it now. So we wanted to make it our own.
So did you coin it first? That's probably a very basic question. Were you the first to use that word?
Well, I'm sure we weren't the first ever, but we're the first to use it most commonly.
Okay. And what exactly is experientialist travel? It's not presumably lying on a beach.
No, experiential travel is what we would say a sector of travel where you truly experience something. You go and you experience what it's like to be in that destination, what it's like to embrace the culture of that destination, to get under the skin of the destination.
Okay. Now, you launched OutThere magazine in 2010. What was the gap in the market you identified, and what was the ambition back then?
Well, you're aging me, James. But really, it's been 11 years. We celebrated our 10th year in a pandemic, but it was a celebration nevertheless. Back in 2010, we saw a gap in the market, and that was that there wasn't storytelling really for people like me. That's where we started, really. Mainstream publications weren't being very diverse or inclusive when it came to travel storytelling, and LGBT publications were very fixed on telling stories about how we're supposed to live our life as a gay person. And we felt we didn't necessarily fit into that mold, and that, we wanted to see the world like everybody else, but we wanted to see it safe, and we wanted to be celebrated and welcome wherever we went. And there just wasn't anything like it. So we decided to start Out There magazine on that basis.
And where did you see it going? I mean, how big was it when you launched? I mean, what was your ambition? Was it something you saw growing? What was the end goal?
There wasn't at the time. It was a little bit of a kitchen table publication. It literally started on my kitchen table. Me and my business partner, I say we, me and my business partner, Martin. Martin had worked in publishing for a little while. He was at the creative helm of many magazines. And I was in marketing. And when we saw that gap in the market, we thought, we really should try and do something like this. And it just started as a hobby, so to speak, that evolved into a business.
And if you look back at your launch issue, and you compare it to, let's say, your most recent issue, or a modern, a recent one, how do the two differ?
They're extremely different, actually. We started the magazine as more of a lifestyle magazine. So within that, we had a lot more sort of arts and culture, lifestyle, fashion. And it was a very thick magazine. It was more like a coffee table book, like 300 pages almost. And today we're much more. We're still considered a coffee table book, but we're much lighter. And we're very, very focused on travel. So there was an evolution there between sort of general lifestyle and moving into travel. I can share the story really if you want to hear it.
Absolutely.
It just wasn't. When we started moving forward with the magazine, we found that it wasn't very commercially viable. We found that fashion advertisers really wanted to be in fashion magazines, and travel advertisers really wanted to be in travel magazines. So what we actually did was to split them. So we had Out There, and then we had, which was an arts and culture journal, and we had Out There Travel, and we had Out There Style. And Out There Travel just skyrocketed. There was a real demand and a real hunger for the type of storytelling that we were doing. And eventually it just made sense commercially to drop the other titles and to focus on travel.
Wow, so that must have been that presumably was a major turning point for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Sometimes you just got to try these things, and you've got to see where the market takes you. It's an evolving market, publishing. And this was at the time. We started the magazine. You got to think at the time where people were saying print was dead, and everyone was moving towards digital publishing. But we truly believed in print publishing, and we wanted to do something a little different and show that there was still room for this, luxurious printed publications.
So tell us. I mean, why do you believe, or why did you? Well, why do you still believe in print?
I believe in print purely because I'm a lover of print, and I feel that particularly at the luxury end of the market, there's nothing as tactile and as experiential. In fact, that's a key word. We talk about being experiential earlier, and there's just nothing as experiential and as tactile as a print magazine. And it allows you to disappear into a world, particularly when we're talking about travel, to disappear into a different world, to really take time out and to really engage with the content. I feel with digital, particularly now with mobile, there's always potential interruptions. An email might ping or a text might ping, and you can't really step away from that. So I feel that luxury print gives you that opportunity to escape for a little bit, which is, exactly what we want people to do, because we're a travel magazine.
And you come out, is it 4 times a year, the magazine, the print magazine?
It is quarterly, yes.
And so you describe it as a coffee table book. Can you tell us about your design and production standards and ethos? What is the secret of producing a luxury print as opposed to just, let's say, bog standard?
To be very discerning. That's
Okay.
that's the key thing. And I can tell you, our creative director and my business partner Martin is extremely discerning. It's you've got to create an experience. You've got to create a world essentially within the pages of your magazine where people feel they can navigate and move around. It's not just about delivering information, it's delivering inspiration. And I feel that's really, really important to translate into the design and to into the production standards. So we have, a foil masthead. We have soft touch covers. We have 100% recycled but textured paper to give that, if you're buying a luxury good, that's what that's what you want to get. You're creating a luxury product essentially.
And in terms of the layout of the pages, how would you, so for somebody who hasn't seen the magazine, what does a feature spread in Out There look like?
Uh, Lots of photography. Photography is a big thing for us, particularly in the travel industry. When you're trying to sell travel, you're trying to inspire travel, pictures do a lot of the talking, but also really clean design layouts. And, to be honest, my creative director can spend a whole day telling you about this, but, top line, clean layouts, easy to engage with information and inspiration, and lots of beautiful pictures.
Lovely. Well, you sold me on it, certainly. So now your strap line, your motto is the 3 Ds: diversity, discovery, and discernment. So can you tell us about each of those and how they apply to the brand?
So I started my life in marketing. Oh, well, I started my life in working for a pub, but I actually started and evolved into marketing and PR. So that was my previous life and before publishing. So I kind of like to brand things up. And actually, this is quite a recent thing. This was just pre-pandemic. We got together and we decided that we needed to really solidify what it is that Out There was about, because we needed to know that internally so that we could pass that on to all our stakeholders and our readers. We started life as an LGBTQIA magazine, and we saw the market evolving. We saw our audience evolving. Actually, literally 5 years into our development, we saw that we were picking up essentially straight female readers as well as gay male readers that we originally wanted to target. And we had to go and work out why. So we did a little bit of research, and we found out that the travel concerns of a solo female traveler, for example, was identical to that of a gay man. They wanted the security, they wanted, they enjoyed luxury, and they enjoyed the finer things in life. They didn't want to get lectured on in a bar, but they also want to be respected. So I always say this when I come down to breakfast at a hotel in the morning. Some people always say to me, Uwern, is your wife joining you for breakfast? But I don't have a wife. And the same thing happens to a solo female traveler. They may be a high flying CEO of a bank, and they come down to breakfast at a hotel, and someone says to them, is your husband joining you for breakfast? So diversity became really the linchpin of what we were about in terms of our content strategy. And we found that delving into our audience base more, we found a lot of other marginalized groups that were not people we originally targeted, people of color, people who are differently abled, because they don't get content in the same way that we produce content. They just don't get it elsewhere. They don't get it in the mainstream. So we had evolved onwards from being what was a magazine for LGBT people to a magazine that was the voice for those who don't really feel they're represented in other mainstream titles. So this diversity and inclusion became one of the key points and one of our key differentiators. So we wanted that to be, the lead pillar of our values. Discovery, obviously, that links very tightly with travel. We are all about discovering new experiences, discovering the world's best experiences. So the subject of discovery and opening your minds and pushing boundaries was also very important to us. And discernment, obviously, being a luxury title, we needed discernment. And we felt that those 3 Ds, as you said, really summed up what we were about, and helped advertisers, helped readers, and helped other stakeholders, PRs, truly understand what we were.
Now, you mentioned you in there, identifying new reader groups. You mentioned, or segments. You mentioned single women. Did the discovery of that change the way you marketed the magazine, or the way you went out looking for your audience?
Absolutely not. Actually, we didn't change who we were. We were very true to who we were. What we wanted to do was to be a magazine for all. I always said this. Although we targeted LGBT customers, we would be so happy if straight readers or heterosexual readers felt that they could pick up this magazine and still feel inspired by the content. So we didn't change anything about the way we approach the world, but maybe we spent a little bit of more time looking at the editorial strategy to be more diverse and inclusive ourselves.
Now, when lockdown was announced March last year, it was immediately obvious that travel would be one of the hardest hit sectors. What was your reaction when that announcement was made, and what was the scale of the challenge you faced at the time?
Well, I think it's needless to say, it's the same as everyone else. We were shocked at first, and being part of the publishing industry and being part of the travel industry both together, no doubt they were industries that were going to be hit. I'm a glass half full kind of person, so I don't really wallow in the doom and gloom for too long. And actually, very quickly, we got the team together, not physically together, but we got the team together to sort of brainstorm what the future could hold and how we were going to navigate this time. Having also worked in travel through the tsunami in Asia and on through 9/11, I was kind of anticipating that this wasn't a thing that would go away very quickly. Although you could see in my earlier editorials, particularly editorials around April 2020, I was talking about it as a matter of months rather than a matter of a year or
Wishful
more.
thinking, yes. Mm.
Absolutely. But, we quickly figured out that if it was going to be a bad year for business, let's make it a really good year for our brand. So we did not take a break. We kept going, and we knew that our audience, who were people who loved to travel, who loved the whole idea of travel, would be feeling uh, very down, and they needed to be sort of kept pepped up and inspired. So we doubled down on digital content. We created a campaign which hashtag was Keep Your Mind Traveling, and we launched that pretty much a week after the lockdown was announced in the UK. And it was essentially a feel-good newspaper, a digital feel-good newspaper, so to say, that brought you know the best inspiration of what people were still doing out in the world, uh, and to bring hope to our readers. And we coupled that with a fortnightly newsletter that went to directly to our entire database to just keep people enthralled, and also to aid positive mental health. We knew that this would be a major issue, and we wanted to do this. And it wasn't a strategy to think, how are we going to make some money in this time. It really wasn't. It was, how can we keep our audience, who has been with us for the last 10 years, engaged.
What content did you push out? Because obviously people weren't traveling, so you weren't getting new material in, or were you?
We were quite lucky, I would say, in the first 3 months of 2020. Let's put this into some context. 2019 was our best year ever. Yeah, so we had planned to go into 2020 with gusto. So we spent the first 3 months of 2020 really getting out and going content. We expanded our freelancer base. We brought in a lot of content at that time. Um, we were also aware, though, that it's sometimes very hard to tell people about traveling out in the world when they're stuck at home. So we sort of engaged in content that was much more about sort of how to experience the world at home, much like what a lot of the big travel brands were doing. So we amplified their stories. We created stories about mindfulness. We arranged not podcasts, but little Zoom presentations with speakers from all over the world, to talk about what they're doing in their part of the world, just to keep everyone engaged.
And what feedback did you get from the audience?
Oh, it was brilliant. Digitally, we've never seen figures like that before in our 10 years of doing business. Numbers were way up, engagement were way up, and we realized the power of our database, and actually how direct to inbox was so important to us.
And of these new initiatives, will you develop them further in future? Have they got a life after the pandemic?
Absolutely. The experientialist is here to stay. It has created much more online space for us. It's really won us a lot of uh, online engagement. I think it's actually really sort of demonstrated how creative we were, and I feel and I hope actually that we will come back stronger as the pandemic starts to move away, because of what we did with this digital pivot. See, I tried to avoid using that word, but
Pivot.
pivot
It comes out
pivot
in
is the
every
word of
podcast.
2020. Yes.
So, Ewan, do you think, let's say in a few years' time, with hopefully the pandemic, well past, do you think you'll look back on this period as having, some positives, despite obviously all the, the traumas around, from a business strategy perspective and a business performance perspective? Do you think there has been an upside to it?
Absolutely. Glass half full, James, always. We have learned so much, and we have learned to also focus as a business on the things that are really important to us as a business, but also as a brand. Like I said, in 2019, we had a really good year, our best year ever. But I felt we were actually constantly firefighting, and we were always doing things that we were told we were supposed to do rather than things that we actually really wanted to do and we felt was very passionate about. So the pandemic gave us the opportunity to take stock about what was really important to our business and focus on the future. And I believe actually we've come out with a strategy for the future that is robust. And we have, we delivered things within the pandemic, sort of toyed with ideas. Toyed perhaps is the wrong word, but sort of developed and sort of fine-tuned ideas of what the future could be for OutThere. And I think we're in a really good place.
Now, you're the founder, I believe, of the LGBT plus travel symposium series. Can you tell us a bit more about that? What you were trying to achieve, what it did, and what success you've had with it?
Well, yes. So the LGBT Travel Symposium series came as a result of a lot of the brand that we work with actually really loving what we did to advance more diverse and inclusive travel. And while we're a consumer-facing publication, there was a need. We identified a need for travel brands, but particularly destinations, but also hotels, to learn more about how to serve our audience better on property, to treat them with respect, to treat them with dignity, to celebrate them as well. And there was a skills gap, there was a learning gap, and it was something as we advance as society, that a lot of these brands felt very passionate about. I have the privilege of being a tourism ambassador for the Tourism Authority of Thailand. And it was them actually that first approached to me and said, we we need some kind of education uh, system to help people on the ground in Thailand to learn more about this market. And we feel that you're the best spokesperson to do it. And we mulled it over and we thought actually this could be a really good thing, and it's something that's very linked to our brand, but you know but and something we were very passionate about. So we kicked off the first ever with the support of the Tourism Authority of Thailand in Bangkok, and the feedback was amazing. We had over 200 brands attend, and with that sponsors and people who wanted to host events and parties. And it was a success. So since then, we've rolled it out to other markets, and we're already working. Actually, we're working on one in Sweden in November, and one next year in South Africa.
And what impact did those symposiums have? When the dust had settled and all the brands had gone back to their day job, what success had you had? What difference had it made?
I think they went back to their day jobs with open minds, and that's all we wanted to do. We wanted to inspire people to think differently, to think about ways of engaging with people that may not, they may not have in their immediate friendship group or their peer group, and that those people needed to be celebrated. So I hope we will achieve a more diverse and inclusive travel industry. In fact, And I'd love for something similar to happen in publishing, because I think we need a more diverse and inclusive publishing world as well.
So how would you see that working, maybe?
I'm working on that.
All right.
I'm thinking about it. I think the desire needs to be there first, and having uh, last year we won the PPA Diversity Initiative of the Year award, and I think the PPA that we've been members with pretty much since day one, has had launched their diversity survey, the first ever publishing industry diversity survey, and it's the first step. That's a good first step in identifying the state of the nation, and I feel that there's definitely a need for more diversity and inclusion, and it's been a hot topic, right, over the last 2 years, and besides the pandemic, in the wake of the death of and the murder of George Floyd, the world, started thinking much more about diversity and inclusion in their everyday work. And I think the publishing industry has too. So I think the first step is always recognizing that there's an issue and a challenge, which I think the publishing industry have. And the next step is talking about having an open forum with everyone about how we can solve that problem.
And if you look at the publishing industry as a whole, I know it's hard to generalize, but what would you say are where is there a deficit, so to speak, on the diversity issue?
I think there's still I think there's still a long way to go. Actually, I think we aren't as diverse as an industry that we hope we could be. And the start of that is actually getting much more representation of different groups of people within the industry. Um, I know we have moved a little forward when it comes to gender equality, but I think there's a lot more to do when it comes to other strands, particularly social mobility, people of color, and sexuality as well.
Now, the PPA Diversity Initiative, which, as you say, you won last year, what exactly was the initiative, the award-winning initiative you did?
Well, actually, our submission was all about how diversity shouldn't be an initiative at all, and diversity should be ingrained into the very fabric of your everyday. And we demonstrated how that was the way we worked out there, and that's what led us to win.
Okay, so if you take just a standard medium-sized publishing company, and they realise they participated in the survey, they know they've got some issues. What would you say should be the next steps they should, if they're genuine about trying to fix the problem? What are the next steps they should take?
To create a diversity strategy. And I know that sounds like a big deal, but it isn't. It's to think about the steps you need to take as a business, as an organization, to to create a more inclusive workplace. Particularly, I would say that's the first step. To look at your board, to look at representation across your company. Do you have those people within your company? Because if you don't have those people, it's very hard to 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 move on, because representation is so important. And then beyond that, look at your storytelling, look at your advertising, look at the way you market yourself. Are you talking to a populace that are far more diverse than ever before?
Interesting. So it's really a kind of a root and branch reform, isn't it, that's needed?
No, absolutely. And I think that's going back to why we won the award. We don't feel that it's something that is an initiative. It's not. It shouldn't be something that's something that like you got to do, in the same way that we feel like sustainability is something that you feel you have to do. It should be part of your everyday.
Now, looking at the global travel industry now, as we start to emerge from the pandemic, what practical changes would you like to see? Well, three, let's say three. Could you name three practical changes you would like to see travel brands take to better cater for the LGBTQ plus community?
I've got a lot actually, but you know what? It's a difficult time in travel. It's a stop-start time. Hopefully, we're moving forward, but only yesterday I heard that Morocco had shut its doors back to us. Had shut its doors again to UK travellers. So we're not out of the dark yet. Things can always change, and I know a lot of people have to focus on business first, right? Making money and making a comeback and looking after their staff and all that kind of thing. But in this time, I feel that it's been an opportunity. Like I was saying a little bit earlier, we've had the opportunity as a brand to take stock of where we're going from a brand perspective, and I think the travel industry can do the same, to really take stock about when it comes to diversity and inclusion, to look at how they're marketing to their audiences, how they're talking to their audiences, and how they can be much more inclusive in the way they communicate with the wider world, but also their staff. There's also a big call in this market to build back better. I'm sure you've heard that a million times,
A few times.
James. But there is ways and means that we can look at making uh, safe spaces for LGBT people across the world uh, as we move forward, and to embrace the community, but not just embrace from a profitable standpoint because you want to profit from the community, but really be part of the community and take time to understand what the challenges are and what people who are different to yourselves face. And I think that's what I would like to see people start to do as we come out of this challenging period of time.
Now, you're obviously passionate about travel. That shines through. Um, what is it about travel that gives you such a buzz?
Oh, that's a hard question, James. But I guess it's just in my DNA. It's as someone who is intersectional, as someone who is from uh, my family's from Malaysia. I grew up here. We traveled a lot when I was a kid. It's in my blood. And what I love most about travel is meeting people who are different to you, meeting people who have experienced life in a different way, and experience, have a culture that is different, because it really expands your horizons. It helps you to be a better person. And that's my fear, from this 2 years in lockdown, that people haven't really had the opportunity to go out and see what life is like beyond their four walls in this case, but beyond what they know. And my fear is that that may lead to a more insular society, and travel has the power to really change that and really really make people uh, see the world in a different way and make us be better people.
And your most memorable travel experience?
Wow. Now that's a really hard question because I do that all. I travel quite a lot, but I would say, I'd say, how long have you got? No, my most memorable travel experience is actually what led me to start Out There magazine. I had traveled to Cambodia. I just left my marketing company. I had the benefit of selling back my shares in a marketing company that I had helped create, and I took myself off traveling because, like I said, it's in my blood. So I took myself to Cambodia, and this was many, many moons ago, when you could still um, climb up Angkor Wat, which is just a majestic, ancient UNESCO heritage site, an entire city, basically, that has been almost preserved. Uh, and there is something very spiritual about the place. I'm a very rational person, but there's something that got me in very, very spiritual about the place. And it was just at the time I was trying to figure out where we were going to go, if we were going to start out there, if it was going to be something that publishing was an industry that I wanted to get up into. And one of the things you do in Cambodia is to climb up Angkor Wat first when dawn breaks, so you see the sun rise over the temples, and determined to be the first person up there because the first person up there gets a blessing from the monk, the abbot, who works at the temple every morning. So was determined to be the first person up there. Strenuous climb in the dark. Got up there and found that I had been beaten by an elderly Canadian woman in crutches. So she must have, I don't know what time she started or how she levitated her way up there, but she beat me up there. Fair enough. And, we spent some time together. We watched the sunrise over Angkor Wat, and as the sun rose, she confided in me that it was her final trip, because she was dying. She had a terminal cancer. And we had a little tear, we had a little chat, we talked about our lives and where we were going to, and her final words to me were, if there's something you really want to do, and you're thinking about it, go out and do it, because if you don't, you'll always regret it. Like me, I regret that I've not been able to see as much of the world that I wanted to see, and now I'm about to pass away. And so my advice to you, young man, is to get out there, do whatever you want, embrace each day as it comes, and take the world on head first. And as soon as we got back from Cambodia, we started out there.
It's a very inspiring story. So she's the one who gave you the final push.
Absolutely, not push
Good
off,
for
not
her.
push off the top of Angkor Wat, hopefully, but yeah, she aimed me in the right direction, and I've never looked back since.
Now, looking ahead, Ewan, over the next few years, where do you think independent publishers, like yourself, should be focusing their efforts?
Ooh, well, that's a crystal ball question. um, I think independent publishers, smaller publishers, should really be focused on creating the best content that they can. Really, I think I felt particularly over the last few years we're moving back towards a world where content is king. Whereas I think when I first started this, and part of the reason we wanted to start out there was we felt that editorial particularly was leaning to clickbait. Was leaning towards what would generate the most clicks, so that pay-per-click advertising would be beneficial. And that's the advent of the listicles and the roundups. And I grew up in a time where magazines was something that really loved. It was something you kept. The very word magazine means something you store away. Something, the best of the best. And magazines became something that was disposable, that you bought for 20p and you'd throw away on the train, or actually you leave there. You leave on the train. And I thought that was really sad, and that's why we've really put a lot of emphasis on production quality and design and editorial quality when it comes to Out There. We don't do any listicles, for example. Everything is long form. It can be a short long form article, but it's still long form. And we wanted to create a platform where editorial was king, where we would always look at the very best as possible when it comes to content. And I feel that we should all, as publishers, really focus on our content again going forward, and create things that are truly special and truly stand out.
And where next for Out There? The next few years, what are your goals, your plans? Where do you hope the magazine will be in, let's say, 2 or 3 years' time?
At this moment in time, we're taking each day as it comes, James. Really, I think if you asked me in back in 2019, at the end of the 2019, I would have grand plans, and we actually did make some grand plans. And I would say that I'm actually we're very lucky that the pandemic came at the first quarter of the year rather than in the middle of the year, because if the pandemic came in the middle of the year, we would have engaged into recruiting and expanding our editorial base, expanding our sales team, and invested in a lot of the capital that was needed to create those things. And I think we would be in a very different place, because the pandemic came early. We pivoted quickly, and I don't think we would have been able to do that if it came in September, for example. So I'm with my glass half full. I am taking each day as it comes, and building back better, and learning from the pivots. I'm giving you all the cliches right now, James.
Do you think you will revisit those plans? I mean, obviously it's early days and we're just emerging from a dark time, but those ambitious plans you had at the beginning of last year, will they be revived at some
I
point, do you
hope
think?
so. I hope so, and I confidently, quietly, confidently know so, because that's the sort of person I am. But the way we're engaging with the industry is very different. We're thinking much more strategically rather than thinking necessarily big, and you know long term necessarily. But we're not being tactical too. We're not going to just try and find out what's going to make us a quick buck over the next year. We're really investing in our thinking. We're investing in the sort of content and what is really going to turn people on after all this time. And we're investing in the people, I think, that we need to build a more diverse and inclusive brand, and that's the key thing. Diversity is the first of our brand pillars. I think we've got the discovery and the discernment part down, but there's always work to be done when it comes to diversity, and that's a big focus for me. So, for example, starting life as an LGBT magazine for men, we're an all-male team, right? And while we're a specialist publisher, we recognize that we need to be more diverse too. So the last issue that just hit the stands, the Spellbinding Scotland issue, has a freelance base made up entirely of women. So we're going to look into doing things like that more to be able to create a better business for us.
An exciting future, you feel?
I'm always excited about the future, because you never know what's going to come. No, it's an exciting future. I really love what I do. I spend a lot of time during lockdown, as I'm sure a lot of people do, thinking about this, particularly in the travel and publishing industry that was, really on its knees. And I thought to myself, what would I do if I wasn't doing this? And I couldn't. I still can't figure it out. I love what I do, and I love this industry, both travel and publishing. And come what may, we will do our best to do our best.
Well, the passion is clear. Uwern, a question we ask all our guests on the podcast. Outside of work, and I think you the answer might be travel, but outside of work, how do you relax?
The answer is travel. Absolutely. And a lot of people ask me, has travel become work and work become travel? It has to some degree. And I would say actually towards the end of 2019, I was getting a little, jet lagged, living in a constant state of jet lag, and trying to run the business all at the same time. But I had a good break in 2020, and I'm chomping at the bit to go again. So travel and anything related to the world of travel. So whether it's hotel design, or it's a cocktail from a hotel, a cocktail recipe from a hotel, or cooking. That's the other thing. If it wasn't travel, it was cooking. That's how I relax. I cook.
All right. In fact, just 2 follow-ups. What's your favourite cocktail?
I am partial at this moment to a whiskey sour, but that's just for now.
And which country or region which you haven't visited would you most like to visit?
Oh, what's top of my bucket list? Ooh, that's a tough one. There are 2 countries beginning with B, and that's Bhutan and Botswana.
Maybe later in the year or next year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can't wait.
Uwern Jong, thank you very much for being our guest on the In Publishing podcast.
Thank you for having me, James. It's been delightful.
A final word from our valued podcast sponsor. Air Business is trusted by 4,000 publications and 3 million happy subscribers, with 10 million customer records on file. It processes £500 million each year in 22 currencies and delivers over 300 million items. Find out more at airbusiness.com. Many thanks to Uwern for being our guest this week. His thoughts on extending diversity by enshrining it in company culture, as opposed to treating it as a series of one-off initiatives, particularly stood out, as did his emphasis on editorial quality. You can find out more about OutThere magazine at their website, outthere.travel. They are also on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter under the handle OutThere Mag. You can find out more about us at inpublishing.co.uk, where you can also catch up on previous episodes of the podcast. Thank you for listening, and do join me in 2 weeks' time for another podcast. Bye for now.